About 11 years ago or so, my wife and my three kids and we were going up to Star Valley, Wyoming for a family reunion. No, as we were driving north into Wyoming, we got the news that ahead of us, the highway had been washed out, and it was going to be about 2 hours or so before we could continue onward. Now, what we could have done was just pull off to the side of the road or find the nearest town, have a bite to eat, and relax until the road was clear. But I was in a hurry. I wanted to get there quickly. So, this being in the days before Google Maps was quite as prevalent as it is now, I pulled out my old trusty road atlas and I looked and saw that there was appeared to me a side road that, branched off east and then curved back north and rejoined the highway about 30 miles, up the road. So I thought, let's just go take that. We can save a lot of time. We can keep moving. So we did. We took that side road, and for about the first 10 or 15 minutes, everything was fine. You could probably guess what happened next. The road started getting narrower and narrower and narrower. The mountains on either side of us started getting higher and higher and higher. And all signs of civilization started getting fewer and fewer and fewer. And before long, this one road had turned into many different roads, all branching off from each other, and the gravel had turned to dirt. So here we were in a minivan in the middle of nowhere on a bumpy dirt road, just trying to figure out where the heck we were. Before long, my kids were crying in the back seat about how hungry they were. My wife was giving me that look to let me know if things get any worse, I was going to be in the doghouse for a very long time. Make a long story short, we eventually found a local rancher. He was kind enough to get into his truck and lead us out of this mysterious valley of nowhere. And we were able to get back on the main highway and eventually reach our destination about 4 or 5 hours later than everyone else in the family. Now, the reason I tell that story is because I think so often we as human beings, we spend an inordinate amount of time looking for shortcuts, for hacks, for magic bullets. When working towards our goals, we're always experiencing an element of FOMO, fear that maybe we're taking the long way and the smart money is laughing at us. But reaching our goals, as you know, isn't about being clever. It's not about knowing some secret that nobody else does. It's about determining what truly matters and then holding fast to that. And today, I'm so excited for this webinar because we're going to be hearing from an amazing advisor who is going to tell us about the things that truly matter when growing your business, especially when growing from a standing start with few resources and even less momentum. He's going to share the areas of his business that he's been focusing on to help him accelerate his growth, set new firm records, and put him squarely on track for a 2-year double. We're so excited to have him today. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce him to you now. Josh, welcome to your first ever webinar with Bill Good Marketing. I hope not your last. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited. That was a great intro. Wow.
I appreciate it.
Yeah.
So just to quickly introduce both of us, for any of you who are new to Bill Good Marketing, very quickly, my name is Matthew Bailey. I am the head writer and the director of client content here at BGM. I write a lot of the marketing content that we give out to financial advisors to share with their clients and prospects. And my guest is Josh Ryan. Josh, typically when we have an advisor on these webinars, I'd love for them to tell us a bit about themselves and their practice. So by way of introduction, please describe a bit about who you are, where you're based, what kind of clients you work with, and give us a bit of a snapshot about who you are as an advisor.
Yeah, sure. Thanks. And thanks a ton for having me. I'm excited. So I'm based in two places, right? That's kind of a tricky question to answer. I built my practice. I started with Edward Jones back in 2008. And I, just like a lot of Edward Jones advisors, you tend to build your practice within like 45-minute drive from your office. Mm-hmm. And about 5 years later, I left Edward Jones, great, wonderful company, just wasn't really a great fit for me at the time. And I ended up sort of partnering up with a pseudo partner who was also an Edward Jones person. And we opened our primary location in a small town called Roscoe, Illinois. And we operated there until 2020. So this is 2013. We operated there till 2020. And then I took advantage of COVID, and I took advantage of Zoom, and I took advantage of all those things that were happening. And I opened a second branch in Gilbert, Arizona. We bought a house out here. I'm in Arizona now. We bought our house out here. We ended up being out here primarily. I go back and forth maybe once a quarter just to see some of those old legacy clients that I still of course love and still are a huge part of my life and my practice. And maybe they just aren't as savvy with the Zoom world.
Right.
Yeah. So, and then, yeah, a bit about my practice. The last slide was really nice. I had a really great, the first 6 months or so after I've put this system into place has been really, really fantastic, but I'm still just a little guy. I think I have 36 million in total assets, but 18 million or so in AUM from some of those old legacy clients that still have a lot of commissionable product. But as I'm going forward, about 85% of my business is AUM, is fee-based business. The other 15 to 20% is commissionable business, primarily annuities, things like that. And actually, my focus has changed a little bit too. When I was when I was building my practice up in basically small town Illinois, I was primarily focused on helping retirees across that threshold. So maybe they're 55, 56, up to and through retirement. And since I moved out here, my focus has changed a little bit to working with Henrys, high earners who are not rich yet.
Mm.
So these are people who have accumulated some pretty good assets. They're making some pretty good money, but they're maybe they're at 20% of where they will be one day. Then maybe they're at 20% of where they want to be when they retire. So my focus has changed a little bit in that regard.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah.
Now you call yourself, very humbly a little guy. And that may be true in the sense that there are advisors, of course, out there who have, larger practices. But
Mhm.
what's, really exciting about you, Josh, is how you have built what you have and overcome the challenge that you have at the rate that you have. And we're going to get into that in a few minutes. So, for those of you listening, Josh is being very humble, but everyone here at Bill Good Marketing, we are just so excited about what he's doing, and we're really privileged to be along the journey with him. So, Josh, thank
Thanks.
you again for joining us. Now, before we dive into your story and what you're doing, a few little items of housekeeping. First of all, if you have any questions, we'd love to answer them for you. So please feel free to put them in the chat box. I will get to them as I can and share them with Josh, and he can answer them. And then, if you are new to these webinars, one of the things we always do as a way of saying thank you for giving us an hour of your valuable time is we have a goodie bag. And that always contains various resources that we give away that you can use to implement more best practices right away. In today's goodie bag, we have two really exciting resources. First of all, we have a guidebook called The 12 Best Practices for the Thriving Financial Advisor. That's a book that Bill Good himself wrote, and it contains a lot of really fundamental but critical activities and ideas that advisors need to employ in order to grow. And that's just a really awesome tool. And then, as a bonus, we also have what we call our prospecting playbook. And this is all about helping advisors leverage volatility in the markets to grow their business. That's not the topic we're going to discuss today, but because obviously there is so much volatility, we wanted to make sure that everyone has a copy of that. So you'll find that in the goodie bag as well. And if you stick around to the end of this call, I'll show you how you can get your hands on both of those resources. Okay, so let's get started. I want to begin by turning back the clock a little bit. You already mentioned a little bit about your background, Josh, in terms of moving from Illinois to Arizona, but there's obviously a lot more to the story than that.
Mhm.
Because obviously, a few years ago, you were not just in a different part of the country; you had a very different business. So
Yeah.
I'd like for you to share with us a bit about how you got to where you are and the challenges you had to face along the way, because I think the more we understand where someone's been, the better we understand why they are where they are now. So I'm going to turn the time over to you, and please dive in and tell us a bit about your story.
Sure. Yeah. So I'm gonna go a little bit out of order from the three bullets there, right? So
Okay.
I'm gonna start in the middle, which
Okay.
is the obvious not best place to start, but it'll all make sense, I think. So yeah, so about a year ago, I had a falling out with my pseudo partner. And just to put this in perspective, he's an advisor, I'm an advisor. We didn't share clients, we didn't share revenue, we shared expenses. So we shared our primary assistant. We had a couple of other assistants kind of over the years. We shared the light bill, the rent bill, paying for signage, those kind of things. And And then I moved to Arizona in 2020. And what I noticed started happening was as our businesses continued, and I guess evolve's not the right word because I felt like I was pretty stagnant for a long time, but as they just continue to move forward, how's that? We just as both of our businesses continue to move forward, it became more and more difficult, I believe, for our primary assistant to be able to handle both sides of it. And with me not being there, I felt like a lot of issues started happening, and I also kind of felt handcuffed with my former partner because I felt like I felt like a pit bull with no teeth, right? Like I had to make these hard decisions, and I had to make these big, like, meaningful speeches sometimes to get any action, but because he and I didn't see eye to eye on uh, whether or not even we'd be willing to have to fire her if we need to.
Mhm.
It just took all the power away from me, and I never could get our situation beyond this constant state of just mistakes, just little mistakes, like just here and there, typos on paperwork that were very meaningful, transposing social security numbers, things like that, ending up having to get clients to sign multiple times the same document. It just got progressively worse
Right.
without me being there. And I tried to correct the situation. Things got really weird, really uncomfortable. We ended up having a falling out, and we just ended up splitting up. And that's okay. It is what it is. It happens. But the hard part about it is they began to, uh, I believe, unethically, um, solicit and market my clients. They went on the attack, trying to solicit and market my clients. And here I'm in Arizona. They're 10 minutes away. So it's to some degree it's working. A lot of those clients do, or at least did, feel like they wanted this advisor's office that they could just pop into,
Right.
even though that hadn't been a problem because I'd already been in Arizona for about 3.5 or 4 years by then.
Mhm.
But suddenly it's a problem, right? So I was under attack, and one of the things, and again, some of this is out of order. One of the things that you guys helped me do is how to address that in a really professional, a really caring, in a really ethical way, right? I never attacked him back. I never contacted his clients, although I had access to all of it. I never did any of those things. And of course, those are all your first reactions, right? Like,
Right.
somebody swings on you, you want to punch back, right? And it was really tough. And you guys really helped me through a lot of that. Megan helped you. I think you wrote me a letter specifically at one point just to help me reach out to my clients and let them all know that I'm still here. I created an event right after that helped bridge a lot of that. And despite all that, I did end up losing some clients, and that's where I was at that 18 million or so in AUM. I did end up losing some of those clients, and then so it was really tough. And then it was also tough because I wasn't sure how or what I wanted to do moving forward. I wasn't sure. I felt really burned on the primary assistant standpoint. I didn't want to open a new office space, right? I didn't want to open a new office space in Illinois or in Arizona,
Right.
and in both places now, I pay for virtual space, so I have an address, and I can occasionally use meeting rooms at either of those spaces if and when I need to. But for me, the need to have the big, beautiful granite buildings with glass, and never really had those anyway, but never really needed those on-site locations. I wanted those to be gone
Right.
in my life, and I felt like I could take advantage of what COVID sort of forced the world to do, and that's this right here, is to take advantage of Zoom and just all that technology. So I didn't know how to put all of that together, and at the same time, I read this really powerful book called Unreasonable Hospitality that it just changed how I think about everything,
Mhm.
and it built this idea in my head that what it is we truly do for our clients, and how much we're missing. and how much we're missing for them, and what they truly want. They want to feel reassured, they want to feel comfortable, they want to feel all of these things. And yeah, I just felt like I wasn't living up to any of those pieces. So this book really exposed me a great deal. And then I knew that there were some holes that I needed to fill in. And you and I had worked, but not you and I, but Bill Good and I had worked together in the past. Do you want me to get into that now? You want me to pause on that part?
No, go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. So going all the way back to 2014, after I left Jones, Jones has a lot of nice systems already in place, and when you leave that system, you realize that you're kind of flying blind to some degree.
Right.
My broker dealer helped a lot. There were a lot of best practices, a little tough, but there are a lot of best practices in place for a lot of those things. But I had no practice management. I had no real good follow up system. I had a CRM that kind of worked. So my pseudo partner and I back then together, we hired Bill Good. And man, I watch it impact my business in such a great way right from the beginning. So I already had exposure to who you guys are and what my business was capable of with your guidance
Mhm.
and with your system and with your process. So I'll get into why we only did a year together back then. I'll go ahead and touch on that now. So I don't think my partner had the same experience that I did. Just like Matthew, you and I were just talking about, like if you pay for a gym membership but you never show up to the gym, you're going to look the same, right?
Right.
And I don't know what the deal was, but your system worked so well for me that first year that I was an obvious renewal person, but it didn't work for my pseudo partner. I don't know if that, I say it didn't work, but I mean, I just think he wasn't using his gym membership, but
Right.
who knows, right? So we made the decision that, oh, well, we can just take all these practices that you guys have and we can just apply them ourselves, which was frankly a joke. It's what you've created, the best practices you have, all of those pieces. Like it's just such a giant and magnificent um, process that, man, there's just no way. There's just no way you could put this stuff in without, in my opinion, without guidance, without constant guidance, without. I mean, there's so many things you just can't even understand. So I knew after I read Unreasonable Hospitality that I was missing all of these pieces, and I knew from my past experience with you that your company could fill in the lion's share for me. It was already built. It was already structured, and you can show me how to be so much better in ways that I didn't even know I was lacking. And that's what happened. That's what's happened so far, for sure.
Yeah, it's an amazing story, Josh, and yeah, and it's not an uncommon one. We've worked with so many financial advisors over the years, that have had these kinds of unplanned interruptions, either to their personal life or their professional life, and everything is upended, and they have to. Bill calls it growing from a standing start, which is,
Mm.
I think, in a lot of ways what you've done. And we're going to get into exactly what some of those pieces and best practices have been here in just a second. But yeah, thank you so much for sharing that story. I think it's so valuable for us to understand, and I think it's something we can all relate to. So let's start getting into that now. As we get into the individual best practices, I want to start by sort of looking at the problem we're trying to solve here. Because whenever I'm putting a webinar together, I always like to start there. What problem are we trying to solve? And when preparing for this webinar and thinking about that problem, my mind went back to an object lesson that I learned years ago. And I'm sure it's one that everyone listening has also heard. It's the analogy of the jar filled with rocks, pebbles, and sand. Now, if you haven't heard it, very briefly, it goes like this. Imagine you have an empty glass jar, and that jar represents your life or it represents your career. And to the side of that jar, you have a pile of rocks, you have a pile of pebbles, and a pile of sand. The rocks represent the things that matter most, the core best practices that make the most difference to your career and to your life. The pebbles represent things that do matter. They are important, but they aren't quite as critical as the rocks are. And then finally, the sand is everything else, everything you can fill up your life or fill up your career with. Now, the reason why I think this is powerful is because Here at BGM, we've helped tens of thousands of advisors over the last 45 years. And many of those advisors were looking to grow from a standing start like you, Josh. But the problem that they face is that there are far more things that they need to do than they often have time to do. And furthermore, there are hundreds of ways that advisors can spend their time, hundreds of ideas floating out there about ways to grow your business. But one of the challenges and the problem is, especially for advisors who are in the early stages of growth, is deciding how to spend their time and what to focus on when it comes to growth. Because getting that decision wrong can lead to a lot of wasted time, a lot of wasted energy, and even an overdrawn budget. And here's where the jar really comes in. What often happens is that financial advisors, because there's so many things they can do, they end up filling their jar or their time with sand, with things that don't really matter. And that leads to far less space in the jar for the pebbles and even less space in the jar for the rocks, the thing that really matters. But it's very easy for financial advisors or really any type of business owner, to fill up their jar with sand, with the things that don't matter as much. But one of the things that Bill discovered very early in his career, going back all the way to the late 70s and early 80s, was that the advisors who simply focus on the rocks first always grow the fastest. Because the rocks, remember, represent the aspects of your business that matter the most. Those are your best practices. And then from there, you could fill up the remaining of your time or your marketing budget or what have you with the pebbles and with the sand. So let's get into what those rocks actually are. Josh, when you and I spoke about a month ago, we determined that there were several essential steps that you would tell another advisor to focus on if they ever found themselves in a position like yours, or if they ever just had to accelerate their growth from a standing start. These are your rocks, in other words, your best practices. And I want to spend the bulk of this webinar now going over each of those one by one. But I want to start, I think, with what to me is step one, and that's determining what not to do, or eliminating the things that don't work or don't work as well, or they're not as important. In other words, stop filling up your jar with sand and let's focus on the most important things. So I think to start off, I'd like for you to share with us some of the things that, in your experience, weren't as important, the sand in your jar. Tell us about what those things are and why you feel spending an inordinate amount of time on them is probably not the way to go at first.
Yeah, for sure. I can walk into this with pails full of sand, with buckets full of sand, right? I think you and I talked about it. I say this a lot. I could write a book. I could write a book called 1001 Things Not to Do as a Financial Advisor. And I'm very hopeful that with Bill Good Marketing and the path that I continue to be on, I can finally write the sequel that is like the one thing that does work.
Right.
Right. So for me, that I got really, really sucked into the digital marketing world.
Mm.
And man, I spent so much time and so much effort and so much money on what ended up being very wasted thing, all of it, time, energy, money. It was all wasted. Almost none of it, got me even back to even for what I put into it, right? So I'm talking Facebook ads. I built complex funnels. I built ebooks, and I built. Now I'm not saying ebooks are bad, but how I use them as lead magnets, they just didn't really ever lead to any fruit of any real kind, right? And whew, it's a really very sad story. And I was hyper focused on this, right? So I was hyper focused on this for like 6 years, and I don't know. I think the problem with it is, as you and most of our listeners know, we're in a hyper compliant industry.
Mm.
So that's like that weaves itself into every aspect of our marketing, in good ways and in bad ways, right? The good ways are is the good ways become, we're not out there blasting false promises and telling people things that we can do that we can't do. I like that aspect of it. It keeps
Right.
it keeps maybe some of the unscrupulous advisors in our world in check, and I appreciate that.
Yeah.
But where it makes it difficult is, man, we end up all sounding the same,
Mm.
right? We end up all saying kind of the same things. Like, if you want to have confidence in this, you're confident. If you want to, and it just it doesn't it doesn't allow us to stand out. It doesn't allow us to really showcase. Up until recently, testimonials weren't even allowed. And no matter what, and I've hired probably 10 different digital marketing gurus over the past 6 years. And man, without even people that are industry specific, and without fail, um, every time it would end up being, we would end up having to neuter or water down our message so much. Man, I never got the kind of click through rates that they promised. My ads never performed better than X. My webinar never performed better than this. And it was always just kind of a real struggle. And it was this, I guess, just this unbelievable effort in in the wrong direction. And what hurts about this, I'm going to be completely vulnerable here. What hurts about this is I'd already done so many things that worked so well, right? Like it works so good, you stop doing it, right? Like that's a common theme for me for sure. I don't know, maybe some of the listeners can, that maybe that resonates with some of the listeners too. But it just, it's a thing, and it's tough, and you get to the point where I think you get just too emotional about it. You're like, you know what? Sure, no other financial advisor is making this work, but I'm going to be the one to do it.
Yeah.
And that just, I mean, I don't know, man. So that brought us to step one: 1,001 things not to do as a financial advisor.
It's so interesting to hear you talk about that, Josh. And it makes me think of something that Bill himself has been saying for decades. He likes to say there are two critical mistakes that a financial advisor can make. Mistake number one is having a good idea and then abandoning it. And
Mhm.
mistake number two is having a bad idea and sticking with it. And it's a tale as old as time. It's something that we have to, here constantly guard against. Now, I
Yeah.
want to stress something really quick before we get into the things that have been working. You mentioned things like marketing funnels, Facebook ads, social media posts, ebooks, all of that. I want to stress none of those things are bad. In fact,
Mhm.
here at Bill Good Marketing, we help advisors with all those things. We produce ebooks on a quarterly basis. We produce social media posts, and we have a special service that posts and launches an entire social media strategy for our clients.
Mhm.
We help advisors with Facebook ads and funnels and so on. Those things are good,
Mhm.
but they're not rocks. They're not the things that matter most. They're at best pebbles, and while they're helpful, they're not what's going to lead to the kind of growth that people want to achieve.
Matthew, and I'll piggyback.
Yeah,
Sorry
go
to
ahead.
interrupt. I'll piggyback on that and say it was your letter specifically that taught me exactly what I was doing wrong with
Mhm.
all of that stuff, right? So and I'll make this brief. So the tricky part about digital marketing is it's really, really, really expensive, right? You're
Yeah.
paying so much for these ads, and it's just click after, like, that's what you're shooting for.
Mhm.
So I wanted to try to get the most bang for my buck. And not every other, so many other industries out there are able to be so much more aggressive with their headlines, with their sub headline, with all of those things. They're able to be so much more aggressive, right?
Yeah.
And then so I started introducing your letters, and the Wilson campaign letters and some of the other campaigns. And as I'm reading them, I'm literally like, this is like, I'm not even asking for anything. Like, where's the call to action? Why aren't we pushing? Where they're not being persuasive enough. And I'm like, you know what? I gotta just trust the system.
Yeah.
And I deployed them. And it was because they weren't so aggressive. It was because they weren't asking for something every time
Right.
that made people, first of all, read the whole thing, because it's an interesting story that's real and visceral and important to them. And I think, I'm speculating here, but I think what it ends up doing is it just ends up disarming the people that are reading. It ends up disarming them, because I'm not trying to constantly shove something in, like, book an appointment, let's get together, let's sit down, let's go over this, tell me what you got, how much is in your 401k. Like, it just takes all that a step back. Like, it's like, go slow to go fast kind of thing.
Yeah.
And that's the thing that I've probably, among all the things that I've learned from your letters and from your system and all those things, that's probably the most important thing that and I'm not saying I was aggressive. I don't want to put that thought out there, but
Sure.
I had expectations. right?
Yeah.
And I still do. They're just different expectations now,
Right.
thanks to what your letters have taught me.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Josh. We're going to get into those letters here in just a few minutes, but well, I think this is a perfect segue into step number two, which we're going to get to here in a second. You
Mhm.
know, I think the things that you said, were not working. Determining what is the sand and what are the pebbles. The
Mhm.
the 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 big takeaway from me there, Josh, is that any activity that is treating your clients or potential clients as customers and yourself and what you provide as a commodity is in the end of the day, it's not going to move the needle very much because we are in a relationship based business. The things that you do that deepen relationships, and we're going to get to that now, that's what really matters. And I think that's the perfect segue into step number
Yeah,
two, and the thing that really I think kicked this off for you, and that is what you call shoring up your existing book. So if
for
you're a
sure.
financial advisor, you want to start growing. Now, sit up, pay attention, take notes because we need to really, focus on this now, shoring up your existing book. Josh, what does that mean? How have you approached it and how has it helped?
Yeah. So for starters, that your opening slide, my AUM grew 43%, 18 million in AUM to just under 26 million in the first 6 months
Mhm.
of working with you. Now that wasn't one big client. That wasn't any of those things. And frankly, it wasn't even like an external active marketing thing, right? It wasn't a ebook. It wasn't getting more people on my letters list. It was just shoring up what I'm doing for my clients. It was showing up for them the way that frankly I'm getting paid to show up for them,
Mm.
right? And which is a little bit of an attack on myself on this for sure, right? It's for some of the guys that are listening to this that don't have a system like yours in place. I mean, I'm sure they can relate. It's difficult to stay in good constant contact with people. And like you and I talked about in our pre-call to this, I would have fought you tooth and nail that all my clients already have all the assets with me, right?
Right.
With the exception of one or two who I already know about. And I've heard this my whole career. Everyone would tell me all the time, your clients are lying to you. They don't have all your assets. Well, lying to you is a little bit, I mean, maybe it's true, maybe it's a stretch, but it's a little harsher than I want to portray.
Mhm.
But what I realized inside of that first 6 months is that once I started showing up for my clients in the way that you guys have helped me to do, man, I think I got a referral. I think I got a new referral or existing new assets from existing clients on average, I think twice a week
Wow.
during those first few months. It was like overwhelming. Like I was just like, okay, let's move this, let's move it. And especially at a time where I was trying to, as we kind of touched on, I didn't have that assistant in place yet. I was using some VAs, which we'll talk about in the future portion. But um, long story short, like I said, I would have fought you tooth and nail that all my clients already have all their assets with me, and whatever assets they don't have with me, it's for good reason, and it like I'm already in. I found that to be overwhelmingly untrue, really, really fast.
Right.
Your initial campaign, the Find the Money campaign, which I think you're going to talk about soon. I mean, just that campaign alone, it just blew the doors open, and it 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 helped me deploy some of the ways that I felt about unreasonable hospitality. It helped me show up for them in just such a bigger, more powerful way in their lives, in a more reassuring way, in a more comforting way, in a more professional way. And the remarkable thing about it is I was able to do all of that by doing a lot less than I was already doing
Right.
because of your systems, because of the process, because of the touch points and the way that we deployed a lot of this stuff, I was having a lot bigger, a lot more personal, a lot more real connection without what I thought I had to do. I didn't have to have 15-hour long conversations with clients every day to really get to know them. I found that I could just touch in just different little ways. So 100% shoring up your existing book was such a powerful part of. I mean, I can attribute all of that 43% to not all of it, most of that 43% to just that initial part.
So I'm curious. You use the term showing up for your clients,
Mhm,
and I'd like you to go into a little bit more. Can you give some specific examples of
mhm.
ways that you showed up for clients maybe you weren't doing before,
Yeah.
or ways that you provided more service than you weren't doing before? That another advisor could go, you know what, I'm not doing that either.
Sure. So a real easy one is the old adage: "The squeaky wheel gets the grease." Right. So I found myself in a very reactive position with all my clients. So a market dip is a great little example, especially right now with tariffs and everything else.
Yeah.
Uh, when things would happen in the market, I would have my normal host of, 5 to 8 to 12 clients who I already knew. I was already planning on their calls. I was already expecting them to call. And we'd have the conversation and we talk them off the ledge. And we're not moving to gold. We're not moving to cash. We're not doing it. We're going to just stay the course and it's going to be okay. Or maybe we are going to make subtle tweaks, but we're not going to overhaul your entire system every time there's a market dip. And what I realized is that I fell into this place of being so overly reactive to the noisy few. And I was ignoring all the people that were feeling just as uncomfortable. They just weren't calling me about it. So when I made that switch, and for me, I turned it into a game. If I called you before you called me, it was a point for me. If you called me before I called you, I would lose a point, right? And it was just a game. But so I started going through and making sure that I touched on every single client when it made sense. And I found out very quickly that the ones that weren't calling are just as scared. They're just not used to having the conversations with me, maybe that some of these other clients feel like they wanted to have more
Right.
often. So just even doing that, just even that little bit of it, just being there in their lives, just even a little bit more made a massive difference. Massive difference. Suddenly we're in. Now, it did create a little bit more work because the more you contact your clients, the more little service things you see, especially in my situation. You see all these little service issues that needed to be corrected still. So for me, it ended up having a lot of little pieces of work, which was at first like, boy, I don't want to sit here and fix whatever, right?
Right.
But then you realize really quickly when you do it, like it's such good faith, and you're supposed to be doing it anyway. So, I mean, like you and I talked about, like these are supposed to be table settings, like showing up for your clients in this way. It should be the minimum amount of service,
Right.
right? Like we're not talking about going to Michelin style restaurants and getting that level. Like this is like going to Applebee's. Like, did you bring me the napkin and the knife and fork yet?
Yeah.
Right. So it's like the basics of just doing those calls. And before that, I thought I provided good service. Before you and before stepping into this and before I guess adopting these principles, I thought that I was providing good service.
Absolutely. If I'm understanding correctly, then yeah. So step two here, if you are growing from a standing start, is you cannot operate under the assumption that everything going on with your existing clients is fine, that you have all their assets, that you are providing as good of service as you can. You have to really drill down and look at all of your clients and go, can I be touching them a little more than I am?
Mhm.
Can I be diving a little bit deeper with them than I am? Can I be trying to be a greater part of their life a little bit more than I am? And just the sheer level of upping your activity with your clients and not taking things for granted, not assuming that everything is fine. That alone is what leads to an infusion of new out of house assets and more referrals because now clients are thinking about you more and they are associating you more with what they expected in the first place when they hired a financial advisor. Am I getting that right, Josh? Do you think?
You are 100% you are. And I would add another layer to this that I really wasn't expecting. And that is the amount of confidence you gain in your ability to serve your clients by serving them starts to show up, right? Like when you are meeting with a new client and you're talking about the services that you provide, they're not hollow.
Yeah.
It's real,
Right.
right? It because and if you wanted to talk to any of, pick any 10 clients in my book, they'll agree and they'll prove it. They'll prove it for me, which gives you like just this level of confidence inside that you can you can you can walk in more powerfully to those client meetings, to those prospect meetings. I wasn't expecting that.
I love that. Yeah, that's so fundamental, but so powerful. Josh, before we move on to step three and the ways you're engaging with your clients more and getting referrals more, we have two
Mhm.
questions I want to make sure you have a chance to answer.
Cool.
The first one comes from Doug, and Doug is asking with the campaigns and I think also the communications you are you using post or physical letters or email?
Both. Both. And Doug, that's such a great question. When I first did Bill Good Marketing, man, the letters were a drag. There were just so many of them, and every month at least, it was a lot. So this time around, I'm like, well, we live in a new world. I think I'm just going to email them. And my coach Megan is like, okay, that's fine, totally cool. A lot of our people do that, but just do me the favor and try it for 3 months. Just mail them out, right? Which I did, and I took a pile of campaigns and I rebranded it, which we'll talk about. It remind me to get to that, Matthew. That we'll talk
Yeah.
about the black letter private list in a little bit later on the call. But so, Doug, I will tell you overwhelmingly, I would say 100% of my clients get physical letters. About 30% of my prospects get physical letters. 70% of my prospects get emails. 100% of everyone on my list for the handholding letters, 100% of everyone on that list gets an email because those are right now, right? Those are right now, and you can do either. But for me, that the email has been enough because they're kind of waiting for it, and I. I guess I just don't want to wait the 3 to 7 days for the mail to show up. Sometimes by the time they get it, it's already passed, and not only is information not as important and powerful for them, but you've already missed the opportunity to be of value and be of service to them.
Yeah.
So with the handling letters, that's how that goes.
Completely. Awesome.
Yeah.
And then we have another question from Kevin, and
Mhm.
he asks, which level are you working with as far as with Bill Good Marketing? Are you using our Done For You service, or what does your subscription look like in terms of what level if I'm understanding what level you're
Yeah.
engaging with us at?
Yes. So I think I couldn't completely tell you. I think I'm silver,
Yeah.
if that makes sense, right? So okay. So I have G5. I have the CRM.
Mhm.
I have a coach. I have content.
Right.
And then I also have, and I operate with two VAs right now. That and one of those VAs is a GSS Guerrilla System Specialist that works for Bill Good. So I just use Teams. So every time I have a client communication, a text, excuse me, any interaction, if I book an appointment, any of those things, they all go into Teams where Emily, my GSS, can take that information and put it appropriately into the CRM. She's also really well trained, so she'll mine it for other opportunities. If Jane Smith and I have a conversation and she mentions, they're going on vacation, I will put that in my note, and Emily will mind that. And you guys have, I think it's called an etiquette letter
Mhm.
that is like, and it's like bon voyage. Here's a couple things to think about when going on vacation. And it's a great little letter. And it's just a little extra piece that people see that like they know you're thinking about them. They know you care about them. So um, okay, so overwhelmingly, the answer is I use G5, I have coaching, I have content, and I pay monthly for the GSS system, the GSS service.
Awesome. Thank you. And
Okay.
we'll get a little bit more at the very end about sort of the different aspects of the system
Okay.
and how advisors can take advantage of it. But
Okay.
I really want to make sure we cover step three,
Mhm.
and that's you mentioned being a part of people's lives. Bill would
Mhm.
call it client engagement because this is what leads to what Bill calls top of mind awareness, where people think of your name first whenever they have a question or a need that has anything to do with their finances. And
Yeah.
there's a very simple way that you can ensure this happens, and that's by using what you've alluded to several times, Josh, is the letters and other communications.
Mhm.
Now, you use a number of different types of communications that you're sending out, as you mentioned, via letter and via email on a regular basis. And I'm
Mhm.
going to go through each of those really quickly. So, starting off, you have the market letters. And you mentioned that you send those out as emails. And I'm going to just really quickly talk about how we do that here at Bill Good Marketing. Anytime there is any sort of major movement in the markets or some kind of headline that is dominating the news or some shift in the economy or development in geopolitics, what have you, we will always come out with what we call a hand-holding letter, just about always within 24 hours of that event. And so what you do, Josh, you tell me if I'm wrong, you take that, customize a little bit for you, and then you get that out as an email to all of your clients. What has that led to, do you think, really embracing that process?
The the little tiny bit of extra work that I have to do for those specific letters has drastically reduced my client's fear, my client anxiety. They're so much more comfortable. There's so many pieces to that letter that I just never would have expected. They view me, clients that I've had for as long as I've been, like I knocked on their door with Edward Jones, like my first or second month in the business. Suddenly they're looking at me as like a whole different level of trust and expertise
Right.
that I never expected. And instead of having to, wrestle them off the cliff to keep them from doing dumb stuff, they'll ask me and I'll tell them and they'll be like, okay, sounds good. Sounds like you got us. So
Yes.
it just alleviates so much of that aspect that I just never would have expected. These letters are also really good because from a referral standpoint, if you're not doing this, I mean, maybe you're calling your advisors, maybe you're calling your clients during this, maybe not. But when a client is at lunch or at dinner or hanging out or doing whatever with their friends and their friends, I mean, they're all talking about like 1,600 point drop in the market it's being talked about. And when it's immediately followed up with, oh, you should read this email that I got. And they are, I mean, that ends up becoming a really great referral opportunity.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I want to touch back on that in just a second, but I also want to make sure we talk about a couple of the other kinds of messages that are
Mhm.
so important, because I think equally important is that you send out what we call feel good messages, messages that have nothing to do with finance. They have everything to do with the holidays, with inspirational stories going on. Tell us a bit about this and why this matters.
Yeah. Again, it adds a level of just personal, right? It just becomes really personal. Like I think like my second or third letter was a letter that was like that was is talking about like grinding coffee beans and
Our Labor Day letter. Yeah.
the Labor Day,
Yeah.
and I had like four different clients send me texts like one of them said like it was like you're in my kitchen every morning. And I'm like, oh, cool. Thanks, Matthew. Yeah. So it develops this level of connection with your clients, just a personal level that you just kind of couldn't do without it.
And along those lines, I think is the next type of message you send out. You mentioned these already, the etiquette letters.
Mhm.
And so what these are is whenever a client or a prospect is going through something meaningful in their life, you want to address that in some way via letter. So, if they have a death in the family, you send a condolence letter. If they are sick, you send a get well letter. If they have achieved something awesome in their life, you send a congratulations letter, and so on and so forth. And by doing this, anytime that they are experiencing something meaningful and then they see your name attached to it, they associate you with the meaningful events going on in their life, and you become a part of that life. You're no longer just a hired hand. You are someone who is intimately involved in what moves them, what drives them, what scares them, what excites them, what saddens them, and what gladdens them. And it's so powerful when you do this on a regular basis, isn't it, Josh?
Without a doubt. And I want to stress how how simple your process makes that, right? Like I'm not stopping to write a two-page, well-crafted, well-constructed letter. Like the system knows to look for it because the GSS knows, or because your personal assistant knows, or somewhere along the line you know to look for it, and you literally click a button and the process just boom, here's your letter. And then you read it and you make your changes, you make it yours, and then you send it out. So it sounds, if you're not familiar with the system and how it works, that sounds like it's this big complicated process,
Yeah.
but it's really, really, really simple.
Yeah, that's a great point, and one I
Mm.
neglected to even think about. So,
Yeah.
thank you for mentioning that.
Mhm.
The big takeaway here is whether you use our system or not. With this step, if you've done what Josh has already said, where you've shored up your book, you've focused on being there, being more present with your clients. Now, the next step is do not let any opportunity go, whether it's involving the markets, whether it's involving their personal lives, whether it's involving the holidays or what have you, without putting your name in front of them with something that educates them, inspires them, and moves them. The more you do that, and there is no better medium than the written word, especially if it's via physical letter, because physical letters, they get read, they get kept, they get shared, and so on. That ultimately is going to be so powerful when it comes to growing your business, because that's what leads to more assets, more referrals coming in the door.
Mhm.
And then the final point of client engagement that I want to get into before we go into step 4 is personal contact calls. Now, one of the things Bill has always taught advisors to do, this is one of those big rocks to fill your jar, is that every single client and prospect, but especially clients, should receive a personal call from you, or at the very least someone in your office, at least once every 90 days. Now, I know, Josh, this is still something that you're in process of really systematizing and
Mhm.
making be a really regular thing, but it's also
Mhm.
something that you've really embraced over the last 6 months or so. So tell us
For
a bit
sure.
about these and how you approach what we call personal contact calls.
Sure. Yeah. So your system is it's just, again, I'm a huge fan. So I apologize if this sounds like a giant commercial, but for me it really is, because I'm a huge believer, right? But your system systematizes all of this so unbelievably well. Like you help categorize and you help me segment my clients based on multiple factors, not just revenue, not just whether or not I like them, but based on multiple factors. And based on those factors, it helps me determine what my call frequency should be, what my point of contact frequency should be. And then you have guides and specific conversations that are designed to move the relationship forward. I mean, you get to the point where you have specific scripts written out for how to have these personal calls, and it's not like, here, follow this script. You don't become robotic. It's more like this is ultimately what you're trying to accomplish on this call, right? And the scripts then become an example, right? So you're not, I don't think you're supposed to read it verbatim.
No.
You're supposed to kind of go through that process, but those become, and especially when we get this really ramped up, and the system would automatically pull up and say what the last conversation we had may have been, or what the last few conversations that we had may have been. So when I call them back, and it's like, Matthew, last time we talked, your son was going into a travel baseball tournament. How'd that one fare? How'd it work out? Like you people like you actually do care, even though it's scripted, even though it's written out. You actually do care because you took the time to actually do it, right? So it's not like you're faking any of these things. This process just makes it able to be done in such a concise and direct way,
Yeah.
and they're powerful.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's terrific. I mean, all these core things, again, they're fundamental. They're basic, but man, they really move the needle, because they make clients and prospects think of you first
Mhm.
whenever they need help, and they know they don't have to reach out to you. You'll be reaching out to them.
Yeah.
Okay, step 4, if you are trying to accelerate your growth, or grow from a standing start, is what we call find the money. I love this one. This is the name of a campaign. It's the very first campaign that most advisors will run when they first join the Bill Good Marketing System. And the way it's designed to work, Josh alluded to this earlier when he said, your clients, you can't assume that you have everything. When you hear people say your clients have other assets out there, you need to believe it. And that's true. In our experience, most advisors only have around 40 to 50% of their clients' assets, even when they think they have 100%. And what this campaign is designed to do is designed to help you uncover those assets, get them moving over to your management, and it also helps you generate referrals along the way. So Josh, why don't you just quickly tell us a bit about your experience with this campaign when you first came back on to the Build Good
Sure.
Marketing System?
Well, so I had almost an identical experience with this campaign both times,
Right.
right? It was both times that I used Find the Money campaign. The first time back in 2014, the second time about a year ago. I had almost the same experience. I will tell you, both times this campaign more than paid what I pay you.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
But just from this campaign, like
Right.
probably 3x. The second time, at least 3x what I paid you. So
Yeah.
but it's also very endearing to client. You're asking for more money, but somehow it ends up being very endearing to clients as well. So both of those things are 100% true, and it just it it's just very revealing in a lot of those ways. And I don't just do it. That's all I would say. Like just do it and do it how it says to be done.
And so
That's
how it says to be done, just really quick to jump in, Josh, how this campaign works is what you're doing is you're sending out a letter with a questionnaire, and the letter is talking about the different ways that you can help them or different aspects of their finances that need to be addressed. And the questionnaire simply asks them questions about that area of their life or that area of their finances, and then simply at the very end, asks, do you have any other assets that I don't know about that we need to chat about? And what happens is clients will fill that out, they'll send it back in, and you will find out they have an IRA here, they have an inheritance over here, they have this account over there. And then next time you bring it up, when you talk to them, you just have to ask about it. The conversation begins. You can move it to your management. And it's just there are some more aspects to the campaign we won't get into here, some more steps to it that really make it work. But it's such a powerful way to get the ball rolling, to get those new assets coming in. So step 4, you want to grow from a standing start, look to become sole provider for your clients, reach out and find those additional out of house assets. They're out there and they're available.
without a doubt.
I know we're running low on time here, but I want to make sure we get into two other things really quickly.
Mhm.
Finally, step 5, time management.
Yeah.
You, Josh, have been able to craft, I think, the perfect lifestyle for you. But we mentioned how advisors, they have so many things they can do in a day. It's so important that there are only so many hours in a day. There are only so many miles worth of gas in a person's tank. So you have to maximize your time and work in the most efficient way possible. So tell
Mhm.
us a bit about how your day looks, Josh, and what are the things that you do as essentially a solo practitioner, with a virtual assistant to maximize your time and manage your day efficiently.
Sure, without a doubt. So I will say, without a doubt, leverage technology. Technology is such an underused tool across the board. I think in our industry, text the third button down, text messages. We started using an app called My Rep Chat that was approved by the broker dealer. That has been, I mean, I get on average three calls a day from clients who need things. Everything else is a text, which
Right.
means I can get to it when I can get to it. So then I just have to learn to prioritize, right? I can't pick up my phone and respond to a text during a meeting, right? And now I don't have to. I mean, you can. I'm the one who answers my phone here, and yet it hasn't rung at all, right? So all of those things are really good. I've been able to leverage virtual assistants. I touched on it before with the Gorilla System Specialist, and then I also have a VA on the other side, which is specific to my broker dealer, to my RIA, where I pay for, it's a traditional VA situation, but they work directly for the broker dealer. These are people that actually wrote the paperwork that they're filling out. So I've used technology. I've used Microsoft Teams and Microsoft Forms, and a very small but powerful stack of tech where, I mean, I open accounts on Microsoft Forms, which automatically get emailed to the VAs and they know what to do with it based on the questions on there. So a lot of that stuff I had to shore all of it up because I no longer had that primary assistant and I didn't want to hire one that sat next to me. And what that's allowed for me to do as a person is to be able to deliver this higher level of service to all of my clients, more personal level of service to all of my clients. But like it's the dream. I can anywhere I can plug my laptop in, I can work. So I literally could spend 3 weeks in, the Bahamas working, and my clients are totally like they don't feel a blip whatsoever.
Right.
So unless I'm in the pool, right, or in the water, so that has made things very, very seamless.
That's awesome. And it's so exciting to anytime we hear from an advisor who's managed to create that virtual, working environment for them and make it work. That's just, it's really, really gratifying for us to see because I think that is the goal, the dream for so many people.
Yeah,
And we're just excited that you've done that,
it was
Josh.
for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just very briefly, I know you've got a couple things cooking that
Mhm.
are sort of the next phase of your growth, and I wanted you to just preview those really quick about what we're going to cover with you when we have a webinar with you in a year or two. So just
Yeah.
tell us what the future looks like for you, really quick.
Yeah, so for sure. The image you're looking at right here is earlier you showed a slide with all the different ways that I communicate with my clients. I've packaged that and rebranded it, and I call it the Black Letter Private List. And I actually
Mhm.
had a little video made specifically to, I guess, to promote the Black Letter Private List, which will be on my website when it's done. But that's designed to just, I mean, that's the cultivator, right? That's the system where you meet someone at the Chamber of Commerce or at the beach or wherever, and you want to be able to drip on them, but it's kind of inappropriate to
Right.
ask for their business. So this Black Letter List fills it in really nicely. And then I just elevated it. I gave it a gold logo, and there's a brief application that you have to fill out before you can be on it. And that's just a way for me to determine, if they're a $5 million client who doesn't currently have a financial advisor, I'm going to mail them the letters, right? If they're a $5,000 client who thinks they already know everything they need to know about money, they're probably going to get emailed the list, right? So the application allows me to sift through that. Um, in a pretty easy way. And a lot of it ends up just being really automated. But what I'm really excited about is I'm just about to launch is the next step in. So one of the first things you guys did is after you talked to me and talked to like what I'm looking to do is you helped me develop a specific custom strategy plan for me specifically and for what I'm trying to include. And phase two of that plan is COI marketing,
Right.
is talking to I guess the one to many marketing philosophy, talking to the CPA who might have 4 clients that they don't even think about to send
Mhm.
for referrals and things like that. And you have a whole process and a whole system specifically designed for cultivating that relationship. I can't wait to start it. That's on my docket for the beginning of next quarter to deploy and to go hard. And it's like we're building the frame and the construct of it right now, and I'm just really excited to get it going. Because I feel like although it took me 6 months longer than I expected, I've really done, and I say that because there was a lot more opportunity than I expected. I've done the work to shore up my business, to shore up my relationship with my clients, and to be able to launch the next more outward step, which would have been 100% backwards from what I would have thought. I would have thought I would have done that part first,
Right.
and then I'd fix the stuff with my client. But I'm so glad you guys talked me into doing it this way. So yeah,
That
I'm
is
really
really
excited about it.
exciting. Yeah, that is really exciting. I mean, COI networking and working with strategic partnerships, that is one of the most powerful ways to explode your pipeline, with prospects and to, expand your network to all kinds of new relationships. So I can't wait to see what you do with that with your coach, Josh. And hopefully we have you on a webinar in the future where you can
Yeah,
talk about that.
yeah,
Okay, so there you have it. I mean, those are 5 steps to growing your business, to accelerating your growth from a standing start. again, they're fundamental, but they're timeless. These are the rocks you want to fill your jar with because they are what ultimately will make the biggest difference in growing your business. Now, if you need any help with systematizing the things that Josh has talked about, or the very other, the varied and many other aspects of running a successful practice, that's where the Bill Good Marketing system, comes in. The whole point of the system is to provide you with all the processes, all the content, all the campaigns, all the coaching, and all the technology to enable you to implement more best practices faster, to fill that jar with more of those super valuable rocks. So if you ever need any help with that, please let us know. We would love to be able to chat with you about how we may be able to help you the way we're helping Josh and so many other advisors. And if you're at all interested whether you work with us or not, in being able to start putting your foot onto the gas pedal, hitting that accelerator, the thing I'd recommend that you do next is schedule what we call a growth potential analysis with Stephanie Peterson. Stephanie Peterson is our head of growth. She's also one of the most experienced and frankly best coaches I've ever had the privilege of knowing. And one of the things, what she really does almost all day long is she meets with advisors like you and she looks to see, okay, where's the low hanging fruit? Where do we need to start? What are the most important rocks you need to focus on? And what can you expect as far as growth if you implement those things? It is a very quick, it's free, it's well worth your time. And if you'd like to schedule one with Stephanie and begin to hit that accelerator, I highly recommend that you do that. And all you have to do is in the report card, which I'm about to show you, just a request to say, yeah, I'd love to meet with Stephanie. It's the best and easiest way to jumpstart your growth into the future. Again, whether you work with Bill Good Marketing or not. Now, without any further ado, I promised you a goodie bag for those of you who stuck around to the end, and I want to give you that now. Again, this goodie bag contains 2 resources, 2 different guidebooks that can help you implement more best practices that will help you grow your business. The first one is the 12 best practices for the thriving financial advisor. This is one that Bill Good himself wrote. And then we also have a bonus guide about how to prospect during times of volatility like we're in now. All you have to do to get that guidebook is fill out a report card. It just takes you about 30 seconds just to let us know what you'd like to hear from us in the future, what you got out of this call, and that will take you immediately to the goodie bag with these 2 resources. And again, you can also request a growth potential analysis with Stephanie on the report card, which I highly recommend that you do. Josh, thank you so much for sharing your experiences, your story, your expertise with us. I had a blast getting to know you more and to hear what you're doing. So yeah, thank you so much for giving us an hour of your time.
Well, thank you for having me. Anytime I get to talk about myself is usually a lot of fun. So it worked out.
Absolutely. We do have a question from Eric, who asks about our G5, which is our in-house CRM. He's asking about when that'll be available again. Eric, if you fill out a report card and you just put that comment in, I can have someone who is far more well-versed on that topic than I am reach out to you. So just go ahead and fill out a report card, put in a comment that you are interested about G5, and we will have someone reach out to you. But in the meantime, I think that covers everything. All of you who have joined us on this call, thank you so much for giving us your time today. I hope you benefited from it. And the ultimate takeaway I want you to remember is this. Your career is a jar. What you fill in it is up to you. And if you spend your time filling it up with those rocks, those core best practices, if you do what Josh has done, where you shore up your existing book, you focus on how all the different ways you can communicate and engage with your clients, you find that money that's out there proactively, and you focus on leveraging technology to better manage your time, you will see an explosion in your growth, even if you're doing it from a standing start. And if there's any way we can ever help you with that, please let us know. That's what we're here for. So, Josh, on behalf of everyone here at Bill Good Marketing, thank you so much for your time today. Hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, and we'll see you on our next webinar very soon.
Thank you too. Thanks to everybody listening.
Bye.